Alrighty, my fingers are crossed and I am dreaming of this turning into a beautiful snap pea wall this season. And try to make that come to life, I just planted 60 snap peas at the back of it. And so in today's video, I'm gonna share with you 8 tips or steps that I utilized for both starting and transplanting these snap peas to try and bring the snap pea wall to life this season. And the first tip is to start them in seed cells. There's 2 reasons why I personally prefer to start them in seed cells. First, I've found that peas and beans are most susceptible to being eaten by birds, bunnies, and other garden critters. But once transplanted a bit taller, I find they don't get disturbed at all. And secondly, to avoid any gaps in the planting area. If I direct sowed the seeds, then there could end up being a 6-inch or 12-inch area that doesn't germinate, but by transplanting them, I can ensure they are perfectly evenly spaced, which frankly just brings me a lot of joy. Now moving on to tip number 2, that's to start your snap peas early. And for myself personally, I don't like to start my snap peas till around my last frost. And so to find out when your last frost is, all that you need to do is Google the name of your city and last frost. That's immediately going to give you a date, and you can use this as a bit of a benchmark or starting point. You could start them a couple weeks earlier or a couple weeks later. And so let's assume that it's the beginning of May and let's start some snap peas. So tip number 3 is to use a 50-cell tray, just like this one right here. Now, I'm usually not a huge fan of these trays with smaller cells, and the reason why is because after about 14 days, we would need to pot anything up into a larger seed cell. However, with beans and with snap peas, after about 14 days, we need to be moving them into the garden because they don't do well getting potted up because of how tall and long they grow. Therefore, it ends up actually working quite well for them. Now, what I'm doing here is just beginning to fill these seed cells up with my warm casting seedling mix, which I absolutely love for starting snap peas. I actually just finished a snap pea germination experiment where I compared my warm casting seedling mix to a regular store-bought sterile mix. And in the sterile mix, only 11 of the 25 seeds successfully germinated. But in my warm casting seedling mix, 16 of the 25 successfully germinated. So if you want to get your hands on it and try it out this season, simply head to the link down in the description to grab yours. Now they're all filled up, so the next thing I'm going to do is just gently tap the seedling mix down so it's a little bit compacted and about 1 centimeter or a ½ inch from the top of the seed cells. And once that's done, I'm going to put 1 snap pea into each seed cell. And my personal favorite variety is the Super Sugar Snap Peas. They're super productive from a yield perspective and so tasty straight off the vine. Now I'm going to add 1 turkey base of water to each row of the seed cells. So 1 turkey base of water per 5 seed cells. And the reason why is because for the seeds to germinate, they need to be in a consistently warm and moist environment for the entire germination period. And personally, I find the turkey baster to be a great tool for getting a good amount of water into the seed cells, but not completely overwatering them. And now lastly, I'm going to cover them with a little bit more seedling mix right up to the top of the seed cells here. And once that's done, I'm going to add 1 more turkey base of water to each row of the seed cells. You'll make that 1 to 2 turkey base per line. So these babies are all set to begin germinating. They've got everything that they need except for warmth. So tip number 4 is to keep them warm and moist for the entire germination period. So given that it's still early in the gardening season, I'm actually going to take these babies and bring them inside. And the reason why I'm doing this is because outside it's still getting really close to freezing level, but in here with my little space heater on, it's staying at right around 70 Fahrenheit every hour of the day. And that's going to make it a lot easier for them to germinate. Now the second piece that they need is of course moisture. And so over the course of the next 10 days, all that you want to do is make sure that the seedling mix stays nice and moist. And to check this, you can just place the back of your hand onto the seedling mix. If it's moist to the touch, then they're all good. But if it's starting to get dry to the touch, then simply give them another turkey base of water and continue to monitor them every few days for when they need to be watered next. Now, after the first 5 to 7 days, you're going to see the first seedlings have sprouted and beginning to poke through the surface. And just like our beans and a couple other crops, peas grow very, very fast. And so we're gonna need to be transplanting them into the garden very quickly, which brings us on to tip number 5, which is to harden them off. Now, once they're about 3 to 4 inches tall, you're gonna wanna start bringing them outside into the garden to begin introducing them to the intensity and variability of the garden. That's the hardening off process. And I've actually got a full video on how to go about doing the hardening off process. And I really encourage you to check that out because that's exactly what I do with all of my seedlings. So these babies are all hardened off, ready to be transplanted. But just before we do that, tip number 6 is to prep the soil. The dianthus is getting tall over here. But as you can see, I've already planted in a first round of snap peas. And what we're gonna do is now add a second row right in front of them to really help turn this into a snap pea wall for the season. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is put down 1 inch of compost across the planting area. And this is something I do in all of my beds and garden space before planting, just to ensure there's constantly new organic matter going into the beds. Next, I'm gonna grab my hory knife and I'm gonna dig a 2-inch trench along the front of this trellis. And now in that trench, what I'm going to do is sprinkle about 1 handful of worm castings per square foot, and then 1 tablespoon of 444 organic fertilizer per square foot as well. I use these 2 amendments to transplant everything in my garden, and it ensures that they've got all the nutrients, all the microbes that they need to begin putting on tons of growth once they're planted. Alright, so the space is prepped, the babies are ready. It's time to transplant them in. And tip number 7 is to transplant densely. And so I'm simply going to pop them out of the seed cells and then basically plant 1 every 2 inches. And while I get these planted, I wanted to introduce you to my online gardening mentorship, Grounded. See, I know that it can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming to get into gardening with all the information that is out there. So as a mentee, I'm going to support you all the way through the gardening season so that you become a competent and confident gardener. You're going to participate in live lessons that I run, live office hours that I'm hosting where I answer all of your questions, and you're gonna be part of a private and closed community of like-minded gardeners. So if that's the kind of support and guidance that you're looking for and craving in your gardening journey, then simply click on the link down in the description of this video and book in a one-on-one enrollment call with me so that we can get you into Grounded. And our 8th and final tip for today is to simply train them up the trellis. So I'm actually using a trellis that I originally used for my squash, and I've got a whole video on that I encourage you to check out as it walks you through step by step how to build it out. The one change that I made is that I switched over to utilizing bird netting on this trellis, and I did this so that it's really easy for the tendrils of the snap peas to grab onto it and begin climbing vertically. And so to train your peas to go up the trellis that you have in place, at the very beginning, all that you need to do is kind of guide them towards it. And then as they get a little bit bigger, you just want to make sure that they're continuing to grow vertically. And again, ensuring that those tendrils are connecting to the trellis. So these babies are all set. This is going to absolutely fill in over the coming months. You're gonna want to stay tuned for that. And just 2 pieces before you head off. If you want to utilize any of the amendments or tools that I used in this video, you can buy them down in the description of this video and I'll ship them off to you. It's exactly what I utilize in my garden and I know you're gonna absolutely love it. And secondly, if you are interested in joining Grounded, just comment Grounded on this post and I'll reach out to you to set up a one-on-one chat. That's all for today here, folks. Go get your hands dirty and I'll see you soon.